Hello and welcome to the Sheep Seats. My video is lagging to begin with again. That'll clear up in a little bit if history is to repeat itself. Tonight is August. We don't have any baseball to draft, so we are jumping headfirst into the NFL streets, and can't think of a better guest to join us than a former winner. Justin Herzig is gracious enough to join us tonight on the Sheep Seats. Justin, how are you?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me, Matthew. Always excited to get some drafting going. And it seems like now is a pretty damn good time to be drafting with all the kind of craziness around the running backs and trying to figure out what camp reports are real and what aren't. But I'm excited.
As someone who's still totally tuned into baseball, I don't really have to get too into camp reports to throw me off because I'm not really reading them. So that's
it. Yeah.
I don't know if that's like good or bad.
It reminds me of the meme where you have like the bell curve chart, and it's like I pay attention to all the news, and I pay attention to none of the news, and I pay attention to some, and we're probably like somewhere down here where it's actually good for us, and then we're avoiding the ridiculousness of I don't know. Calvin Austin is apparently looking good.
I couldn't even tell you what team he's on right now.
There you go.
So what team is he actually on?
I would guess Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Let's do.
Oh, we lost him. See, yeah, he is on the Steelers.
Apparently, when you hit Control T and your finger accidentally hits Control R, it refreshes instead of opens a new tab.
Well, you're right. You're right in place with the technical difficulties here on this stream. Sometimes when we start,
it looks like we are the Steelers, though.
Oh yeah, here. It was it was your self-destruct code.
Hey, if anybody's been hitting the Calvin Austin draft button, they are pretty much hitting self-destruct mode.
Yeah, so we are going to jump into a Best Ball Mania draft here in a moment with both of us drafting, and we're going to try to get in. The thing I wanted to, the reason we kind of hooked up on this was that you threw out just like an open invitation. So why don't you just use this as a platform to see if anybody else wants to talk to you, or, and just, I did a poor job of introducing you. I just assume everybody knows who you are, but if you want to do that, add that to intro yourself.
I appreciate it. Honestly, I've been doing these streams, doing content for the best ball space for, I don't know, 2.5 years now or so. And for me, I don't know, so much of this industry has grown so much in the past couple of years, to the point that even when I won the BBM one, like we were looking at, I don't know, a field size of, I think, what filled within like a week or something when the BBM opened. Like it may even been less than that. Like it is insane how much. Like I joke, I feel like when I won the BBM, it's the same thing as when like Doyle Brunson won the World Series of Poker with like 11 other people in the tournament, compared to like what it is today. But it all started, I think, in my desire of, hey, let's get this game growing. Let's have more conversations around it. And I think I'm in a bit of a bubble where like the people who are very into into best ball, heavily into underdog DraftKings, drafters and such. And so part of my goal was there just like hopefully to get kind of more reach outside of our just circle. And as you said, like, hey, you've been heavily in the baseball streets and just starting into August. I think the majority of fantasy football players, 99% of them, are just starting to think about fantasy football this month. Likely haven't even yet. Maybe their leagues send out some text saying like, hey, let's get the leagues going and such. So hopefully through this, we can just introduce more people to kind of best ball, get more people kind of interested in it, and continue to grow the game.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's that's one of my main goals of doing my baseball streams. Why I started was just because I was doing it and I was loving it, and people were asking me, like, coming back and asking me questions about it. So I was like, well, let me just start streaming. This was like before previous season, and I did a few of them, and so I tried to do a little bit more structured. But really, it's about introducing people to the game of baseball in that case. But yeah, I think in general, the like format of best ball is just like so perfect for so many different types of people.
Yeah. Question for you then.
All right.
From a strategic standpoint, I guess it could be projections. It could be something like that too. But what would you say that you've learned from the baseball, the games, the contest, whatever, that you can apply to the football, basketball space?
Well, that's interesting because part of me doing this is hoping to get better because I haven't had great results in football. I've gotten finals teams in through on baseball, and maybe it's more of a factor of variability and size of contests too. I can't necessarily rule that out, but I think, and maybe this is, you can tell me if this is good or bad, but the thing that I do a lot of in baseball is tie myself to projections. And maybe that's more of a negative and something I need to not bring over. I know that doesn't really answer your question. But personally, I'm tied into projections a lot for baseball because of the longer scoring period in the main. And there's so many more games and events and so many places that it sort of evens out over.
So how do you value projections versus ADP in the baseball contests?
So in baseball, it's one of the things that we talk about. The biggest variability in projections when you're looking at season long stuff. So I'm going to take Cooper Kupp here. We did get the 7 and the 9, so we're close. I'm going to take Cooper Kupp. Are you afraid anything on Cooper Kupp?
He's been falling a little because of the hamstring injury. So you've got that. He's most likely still going to be back for week 1. But it's just kind of, that's why we've seen him kind of fall outside that top 5. So I think in situations like this, it's good to say, hey, I'm getting a couple extra picks of value. Maybe I'll get a unique combination and grab Cooper Kupp in the 7 spot there. I'm probably taking him right now at like 5. So I just think, yeah, that's the right play there. Coming back to me, I will similarly probably grab either Eckler or Bijan here. And then at the 9 spot, you can still usually get a pretty solid wide receiver in the 2nd round. But I think Eckler and Robinson have a little bit of a tier above the others, especially Eckler, and got fortunate and got Eckler here.
Okay. So you're not, what is the joke I've seen on Twitter that Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in football?
You may need to give a refresh on your screen. I think it just kind of froze.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Underdog, not the StreamYard.
Yeah. Okay. So jumping back to your original question about, so I'm having been a big baseball DFS person first. Like I'm all about stacking. So like that's just like a second nature, and that's why I like I can really get more into football than other sports like golf and NFL is because like I'm just programmed to build based on correlation. So like that's a real easy jump over. But as far as projections go, the thing that is really the thing that I tie myself the most to is like the per plate appearance stuff. So basically the per event, I feel like the systems out there for baseball at least are very, let's see, we're on the clock here. I guess I have like another thing, being more of a baseball person, I don't really have any like opinions on these guys compared to each other. Like I'll develop some player takes as the season goes on and we're doing weekly stuff as I kind of watch football. So here I'm just going to take Jalen Waddle, and like I'm the little bit of concern that I have is just what New Orleans offense is going to be like for spending a bunch on Chris Olave. Not so much worried about him based on how he played last year, but I feel like I know what Miami's going to be as a team more.
Yeah, and I have a nice little tier break between Waddle and that next tier of wide receivers. I think Waddle also has some ridiculous contingency upside where if Tyreek Hill were to be hurt, something happened to him, there's even reports he may have lost a step. Like Waddle could be a number 1 in that offense, and we wouldn't be shocked at all. Like if you look at what he's been able to do in those first 3 years in the league and such, and the rapport with Tua, I'm happy to draft Jalen Waddle there. If I didn't grab him, then I think I would have gone for one of the other running backs there. But Cooper Kupp Waddle is a very strong start. You just got to be careful that you don't want to stack Stafford and Tua just from the bye week standpoint. But just got to keep an eye on that bye week 10 going forward. I personally went with Devontae, which I think Devontae is probably one of the better values in this area. People are scared of Jimmy G. Even the more recent camp reports are that like Jimmy G's struggling in camp, which doesn't really matter to me as much. Devontae has been an absolute beast with even the worst of QBs. And so I think, hey, getting him to stack with that, not stack, but to pair with Eckler from a 1-2, I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, I'm as a Packers fan, I'm deep into the Devontae Adams appreciation basket. Hey, what's up, Nez? Thanks for jumping on.
What's up, Nez?
Hanging out. So yeah, that is one of the questions that when people like are just starting to learn baseball, like maybe they're coming from NFL or they're maybe haven't been watching baseball for a while and they want to try it, and they've done NFL best ball drafts. One of the first things they always ask is, what stats should I look at? So I'm going to put that then to you and make it a little more broader. Like, let's say, stats versus projections versus rankings. Like where should somebody new to NFL best ball start in your opinion?
Yeah, so I would say if you're fairly new, okay, so I actually put out an article not too long ago called On the Clock. And what it does is it goes through basically a pyramid of what are kind of the most important things you should be thinking about when you're on the clock. Roster construction was the very bottom. Second or third was player takes. And specifically about player takes, it's important to kind of customize that to who you are and what your skill set, what your advantage is, your edge. I work with someone like Adam Levitan. He has an amazing ability to dissect information and figure out what's real and what's not. I work with some people like Anthony Amico, who is very good at evaluating rookies. And you are on the clock, just heads up. Yeah, so he's great at looking at rookies. Those two people, they should be thinking about when they're on the clock, like where do they have an edge in kind of, evaluating players, talent, whatever it is there. I personally believe that probably 95% of people who are drafting in best ball, playing fantasy football, don't actually have that much of an edge on player evaluations. Maybe they do on one or two players, maybe a couple players that are on their team, they knew in college, whatever it was. And if so, then take advantage of those small areas. But for the most part, if you just use rankings, if you just use ADP, that's probably going to be better than trying to trick yourself or think that it's important, that it's so important that you need to go figure out what projections are actually most predictable, what, watching tape to be like, oh, this person actually looks really good, this one doesn't. Let the people who actually do that as their jobs, maybe you just make a decision on who you trust, who you think is the kind of sharpest in this area, and then go from there. But I think there's other places that you should be kind of focusing your efforts from getting a strategic edge than trying to learn an entire game, like you would if you were going to go heavy into, as you mentioned, like baseball DFS and figure out what stats are predictive. Okay.
Yeah. And the answer I usually give for baseball is look at projections, because they'll take all that. You don't need to know what stats are important. I think, when it comes to baseball, the longer scoring period, like I said, is more important to have a projection source that you trust in that case. I've been so far, I'm about 15 drafts into Best Ball Mania here that I've just been slowly doing when I had a chance. And I decided this year to try rankings before I hadn't. So I've been drafting off of Crane's rankings as mostly because my assumption is that your rankings over at ATR as a group are probably the most popular out there. So just zigging a little bit. And it's not like I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
No, Crane's very sharp. I'm on the board now.
Oh, yeah.
Let's grab some Jerry Jeudy. Gives us a bring back against Austin Eckler for week 17.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I did. I took Lamar here as my first QB, and probably wait for another QB, but to go with that Week 17 Baltimore Miami game.
I like that. I like that. And yeah, now like you don't need to get Tua and feel like you're forcing it, but if he falls you, you can stack him, or you could probably go Lamar and Stafford and have a nice little, that's a good amount of capital invested at the QB position and leaves you with a strong core.
All right, so I think I'm gonna hold off on these two running backs, and I'm going to take one of these guys. Let's see. I think I'm gonna take Drake London. That is we're not, I don't exactly know what Atlanta is going to be this year, but I think they'll be better than last year. And another thing, like you said, he's going to be the number one there. Even if they're not that great, he should have plenty of targets. But to me, getting another wide receiver there in him or McLaurin was nice because they both pair with a late QB later on that I can have that in my back pocket.
And I like doing that. So as you're kind of doing right there, just naturally is you have your picks laid out from who you've already drafted, and now you're starting to think through how's the rest of the draft kind of play out. And if you draft someone like Mike Williams there, well, you're not going to go for Justin Herbert and go with that stack. So you just say, hey, I'm basically drafting someone that's not going to be stacked. And if you want to, that's fine. But it's, it is what it is. I think the other thing to do there, as you kind of just did, is if you are drafting Lamar, I'm usually trying to grab two of his pass catchers later on if you missed out on Mark Andrews. So you probably are going to get like maybe Zay Flowers, maybe Rashad Bateman. And so you bake into, I know in the 7th, 8th round, I'm probably going wide receivers. So maybe now as I go forward, how can I make sure that I have a strong lineup? Or maybe it's focusing a little more on running backs, maybe grabbing an elite tight end. Because you're already baking in, okay, I'm going to go for the Flowers, Bateman, Beckham, whoever.
Yep. And I know it's a no or whatever to queue up on stream, but we don't have too big of a stream here at the Cheap Seats yet. I don't have to worry about that too much yet. But it's also just a safer thing for me as not being like super familiar with the player pool that like.
And honestly, if you're queuing up your own stack partners and someone was watching, I mean, they're either doing one of two things. Either one, they're sniping you just to kind of F with you. And if that's the case, well, you got some enemies out there. But it's not like if it's like, okay, I'm going to queue up Alexander Madison because I think he's going to have a really good year. Or I'm going to queue up Sam Laporte has been getting great news out of camp. I'm going to put him in queue. No, you're queuing them up because of Lamar. Whoever's watching doesn't have Lamar. They don't have an edge in getting those players just because, you have that correlation aspect.
All right. So here is a bit of a decision. Any general thoughts on George Kittle? I think I'm going to go with Ken Walker here to get an RB before I feel like they fall off to a lot of question marks. I mean, there's still question marks there with Ken Walker, but
no, I like Kenneth Walker a lot here. You're getting him right at ADP, a pick pass. I actually like him a little better than ADP. I think he's just proven he's a great runner. And our risk is we're baking in that the expectation that Charbonnet is going to be ready to play right away, that he is going to be an effective pass catcher, that he's going to be able to pass block, that he's going to have the trust of the offense. And there's a lot of questions that come in with that. I am on the board here. Going to be grabbing a wide receiver, trying to think through. Let's see. My next pick is 64. All right, I'm going to grab JSN here.
So that leads me into something that naturally or unnatural, I don't know, something that keeps happening to me in drafts that I do is that I grab a Seattle guy and then I grab Geno. And I threw this at somebody else on Twitter the other day, but I have this feeling that actually this two combo of quarterback, Daniel Jones and Geno Smith, feel like two quarterbacks that we're paying for last year's production at their draft cost right now, when if you could figure out who was going to be the Daniel Jones and Geno Smith of this year, you'd be better off. But I end up either grabbing DK or JSN or Lockett, and it's really easy just to grab Gino with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always looking for who have those ability to kind of go from a late round QB to having a successful season. I agree with you that we are drafting where they are because of their success last year, but like I honestly think that Daniel Jones should be drafted even earlier. Outside of those elite guys, no one had nearly as much rushing yards as he did. He's also now substantially like who were his wide receiver pass core last year was Isaiah Hodgins, Richie James. Like it was ugly. He had no one. Now you bring in Darren Waller, you bring in Jalen Hyatt. You get some actual additional. I'm trying to think what we're looking at. Hodgins. I mean, they signed freaking everyone. I'm trying to think who you're actually going to end up with. I think it's going to start off with Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins, and then in the slot you maybe have Sterling Shepard. I think Jalen Hyatt finds more of a role, but like then you've got offensive coordinator that joined in last year. That's looking. Oh, we're up again. Alexander Madison is a falling value. So we were talking about Seattle. My hope there was actually to get Tyler Lockett come back to me and then get a Seattle stack going. But that was not meant to be.
A lot of running backs piling up here at the top.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on grabbing another running back after going Eckler and Jacobs. But there's a little value in that Madison and hoping that we're not going to get a big wide receiver run. But I think I'm willing to take my chances there. Okay.
So, yeah, I get this is nice. I get Kyle Pitts to pair with Drake London. I mean, there's much to be said about Kyle Pitts and what's he going to do this year? What hasn't he done? Or who's to blame? And all those questions. But I can pair him with Drake London and then hope to get Desmond Ridder late. And it doesn't really matter what or when or how. It's more just a construction thing.
Yeah. And I mean, to elaborate on that, like I do not think that Drake London and Kyle Pitts are there's going to be enough passing to sustain them both. But when you are drafting on the same team, you are also drafting Desmond Ridder. And you're like, you know what? I don't think that, but I'm likely, there's a lot of times that I'm wrong. And maybe I'm wrong 10%. Maybe it's 20%, however much. But in those worlds that I am wrong, I want to make sure that, I've got them. And both of them then could be, Kyle Pitts could be tight end number 2 or 3 and an absolute league winner. Drake London could be a top 10 wide receiver. And so you're building as if you are right. And yeah, I think it makes sense for you to kind of now just say, hey, round 17, you're going to take Desmond Ridder. And that's a great compliment to Lamar.
All right. We got a question here from Eric. Hodgins is currently the highest ADP Giants wide receiver, but not likely a starter. How to justify going for him over later alternatives, or if you justify it at all?
Yeah, I think he is a starter. I think in 2 wide receiver sets, it's going to be Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins on the outsides. You're then going to have a mixture of all these slot receivers that they've brought in, probably starting the year with Sterling Shepard. As the year goes on, I don't know. I think Jalen Hyatt, he's starting to play more with the ones. I think he probably takes one of those 2 spots. My guess is it would be Darius Slayton. Even though Darius Slayton continues to produce, like the team just seems like always doesn't really love him, and you get negative camp reports, but then season comes on and he just like produces. Led the team in receiving yards last year. Isaiah Hodgins obviously came on very strong in the second half last year, and that's where he's being drafted because of that production. Doesn't have the greatest draft profile. Wasn't didn't really do that much in Buffalo beforehand. So for me, like, I get it. I'm not drafting that much. I'm kind of just going the cheaper pieces. I think to start the year, though, he will provide you value. I don't know if he is starting when the season ends.
Okay. So in that case,
Wow, did you lose Zay Flowers?
I did.
Yeah, he went.
I didn't even miss. He went at 73.
He went 73. That is early for him. His ADP is 83. Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right. I'm just going to take a second boring running back here in David Montgomery. and hope that Detroit's defense is as bad as possible. Get a little bit of the Detroit offense. The thing I was thinking about while you're saying that, as maybe Hodgins loses some of his role towards the end of the season. So if you have your preference to stack a Giants stack right now, no restrictions, do you want to pair someone that might be taking that role later, or do you want to pair two people that will have consistent role more through the whole season?
Yeah, so Waller and Barkley are probably the two that I am often stacking Daniel Jones with, because they're the ones that I have comfort in their role. And I think like both of them are at decent like spots where they're being drafted. I think Barkley's actually a little value. I think Waller's actually gotten right to about where he should be. I think if Daniel Jones was being drafted before Darren Waller, Waller would actually be drafted earlier. So when we look at the guys, we'll use Dallas Goedert as an example versus Kyle Pitts. Pitts falls because no one's reaching for that stack partner. Dallas Goedert increases past of what his projection should be because the Eagles drafter wants to make sure they take him. So that's where like Darren Waller, I think his ADP is a little protected because no stack partner is really reaching for Darren Waller. If anyone, the person reaches for him is because they haven't drafted a quarterback and they want to draft one with Daniel Jones. So I like both those guys to stack with him. I think Barkley, pass catcher, it works with the Daniel Jones aspect. Later on, I kind of just mix in some sprinkles in the 18th round. Jalen Hyatt was pretty expensive early on. I was passing, but now that he's in the 18th, I'll take him there. I'll take some Slayton in 18th. I'm not drafting Wandale because Stefania Bell did a podcast with Levitan, and she was saying like she's not even sure if he even fully plays this, like if he plays this year. So that scared me a bit. We're definitely not seeing him for a while. That's how I'd say I'm kind of playing it. Yeah. All right, coming back to me. I want one of these wide receivers. I will, even though Rashad Bateman is there, I'm not going to take him. I wouldn't take him anyways, though. Michael Thomas, I think Cortland Sutton's probably the one that we haven't seen enough ADP change. And I have Judy here, which is nice. So it gives me a double stack. But once that, I think that Tim Patrick news is actually really beneficial for Cortland Sutton. Coming into the year, we were a little concerned about like, what do they think of Cortland Sutton? Are they looking to trade him? There you go.
I don't really want to risk it here, so I am going to take Bateman.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Partner.
And you got one pass catcher for Lamar, which if you only ended up with one, that's a perfectly fine, I think, for Lamar. But where I was going is, so for the Denver aspect, I think there was risk baked into his current ADP for Cortland Sutton on what did the coaching staff actually think of him 2 years removed from the injury? Is he actually fully healed? Do they want to trade him? They trade up to draft Marvin Mims this year. Could Cortland Sutton like not even be in 3 wide receiver sets? Like I think all that risk was already baked in. Then Tim Patrick goes down. Now it's just based. Oh, and KJ Hamler is having some heart issues. So now it's just Judy Sutton and rookie Marvin Mims. I think Marvin Mims has a lot of talent, but there's a strong chance. It's highly likely it takes some time to actually ever get into 2 wide receiver sets if he does get there. And if he does, like Cortland Sutton has had some strong years. So there's a decent chance he doesn't actually ever overtake him throughout the year. I think Cortland Sutton should be going a little earlier than what he is, but his ADP hasn't corrected since Tim Patrick got hurt.
Okay. And Eric here saying if anybody does draft Wandale, they'll deserve to win if they can risk that.
If you want Wandale, take him on DraftKings. Because DraftKings, you're getting 20 rounds, so you can get him in the 19th or 20th. And from a PPR perspective, he's a better play there than he is on FanDuel, on Underdog with half PPR scoring. Okay.
So, I mean, this not to make this the Giants wide receiver podcast hour, but the thing that they're reminding me a lot of is if we go back to this draft baseball season, there's a ton of discussion about the St. Louis Cardinals outfielders, and essentially everybody kind of picked their guy or 2 guys, and took him, or they thought, they decided nobody really mixed them around, or maybe people did mix them around. But what eventually happened is that we were all completely wrong about their playing time. And no matter how good we thought they were, they just ended up rotating either through injury or just weird team situations that weren't predictable, that like basically none of them became a value. So nobody won in that case.
Yeah. I mean, going into Denver last year, I was scared of them because they were like, hey, there's so many mouths to feed. Because at the time we were talking KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. You got, I'm trying to think if it was Dulcich or
not like
yeah, go for it.
Beckham here. And I feel weird taking Nico Collins this early.
You got 3 seconds.
All right. Well, we got Beckham. That's so be it. I don't love it. Just I don't know what he's like going to be. Maybe this is a Julio Jones pushback from last year, who I was like all my closing line ADP value that I got on Julio Jones when he signed with Tennessee. Maybe I'm too worried about that.
The best thing going for Odell right now is that Rashad Bateman still isn't practicing. And so that means that very clearly you're going to have, like before it was probably going to be Odell and Rashad Bateman in 2 wide receiver sets, and then Zay Flowers would come in the slot. With Bateman not even practicing, there's a chance that it's actually Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers in 2 wide receiver sets. While that doesn't change Odell, not Bateman. Yeah. Odell and Zay in 2 wide receiver sets. While that doesn't change the role for Odell, just being on the field with a rookie and Zay Flowers probably spells that like, hey, it's more likely that Odell is going to get a bit more targets, first looks. That's valuable, especially as a free agent, new wide receiver on the team. The sooner he can build rapport with Lamar, the more valuable. And if that means that Bateman kind of misses out, even though, yes, they've been together longer from a team-wise, that's probably the best thing for him. There goes 2 at 108. It's always interesting when because only Tyreek and Waddle are really fighting over Tua. So if one of them is kind of letting him fall, it becomes a bit of a, does one eventually get him, or does someone just take it as the falling ADP value?
And this drafter here did not have Tyreek.
They just took the round of value
and took 2 QBs, Tua and Dak there.
Okay.
Which he did have Lamb with Dak.
And he grabbed Dak first, probably, right?
It was back to back.
Oh, back to back. Same thing. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Not a bad 2 kind of combo. The challenge with, did Gino just go? Oh, Gino just win. Oh, that's tough because I had the pit back. Okay. Adjust. I'm still building for this Denver, but I had that Seattle pick game stat going. I think this is a good time to just grab some Anthony Richardson.
Okay.
About a round past ADP. I'm okay with having him unstacked. And we'll still try to grab Russ a bit later.
All right. I'm going to grab Khalil Herbert here as a bring back to my Atlanta guys. I don't understand Samaje Perine. Maybe this is where I don't know the underlying things on a guy like him, but I don't quite understand how a guy can go from a minor role on a good team to a different team, or I guess I should say, why didn't Cincinnati want to keep him, is I guess my thought, and what makes him going to Denver better? I guess that's a lot of questions at once, but I'll just say I don't quite understand the Samaje Perine.
What you're saying is not used to 5th-year running backs having breakout seasons.
Yes. Yeah.
There you All right. I believe it was more of a Samaje wanting to go to Denver and playing with Sean Payton than it was
Okay.
a Cincinnati or not wanting him. Because I think if anything, like Cincinnati showed that hey, they do like him. They actually used him to to spell Joe Mixon. Basically, what we saw in this Super Bowl afterwards, or maybe it was the AFC Championship game, but like Joe Mixon wasn't on the field and they just got completely grilled for it. So since he likes Samaje Perine is a coach's player. He is an average running back. He is an average pass catcher. He's a great pass blocker, but he does everything the coaches want. And apparently, according to conversations between Samaje Perine and Sean Payton says like, hey, look at the way that I've coached my teams in the past. I don't have one running back there. I like to use multiple running backs. I like to use a pass catcher that I can trust. I want that to be you. And so, yes, we have the Javonte Williams injury, even though it sounds like he's coming back miraculously quick. I'm still expecting a bit of a slow recovery there. But even if he is 100%, I think Samaje Perine still has a clear role in that offense. He's a guy that I'm drafting.
Okay. Answered. I think what it was, I might upset a Jacksonville stacker here, but I'm going to take Zay Jones. I think if I remember right, they threw it to him on the last play of the Super Bowl. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Like the last play, and all these wide receivers that they have, and they have a play for
and Joe Mixon, like, why didn't I have the ball? Why was I not in the game at that time? And yeah. Hi. Coming back around. As long as Gilbert doesn't snipe me, I'll be getting Russ. There we go. All right, so at least I got one of my core stacks. And double stack with Denver plus the Austin Eckler bring back like that.
Okay, so let's take a stop here. You've got two QBs in Richardson and Wilson. Is that a shutdown quarterback button for you, or is that a see how it goes?
I'd say it's a we'll see. I do have both George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, so I may take like a late Kenny Pickett as well, just because when you have already like multiple pieces invested in a stack and you can get a cheap third QB like that later. I think there's reasons to do it, even if it is just from a playoff angle where, hey, they have one big week able to advance me, or that's the one you need in the week 17. But I don't want to say I need it. If I end up with just Russ and Anthony Richardson, I'm probably okay there too.
Okay, so same question then with Eckler, Jacobs, and Madison. I know you didn't love take Madison that to go with the other two guys. So is that like a 5?
I think 5. I'm looking at like a 3-5-7-3 or a 2-5-8-3 with what I have right now. I like the late tight ends a lot. So I'm thinking like, because I have Freiermuth, my last 2 picks will be tight ends. So I don't have to worry about that until then. And then it kind of says like, all right, what do I do with those others? I do like my wide receiver core. I mean, hey, Devontae, Judy, JSN, Pickens, and Sutton, pretty strong 5. So if I end up with 7 there, I'm not scared of a 3-5-7-3 here.
Okay. I know that's there's a lot of times that you're on the clock. I'll let you make your pick then.
Yeah. All right. So Gallup is kind of a tier above these others. Wouldn't be especially if I'm only going to go 7 wide receivers. I'll go Gallup there. Gives me a solid 6th wide receiver.
Okay. Let's see. I think, and this is where it gets tough on me. Like a Tank Bigsby. I don't really know what to do with a guy like that, rookie, or a Kendre Miller. Not to make my pick for me.
Tank Bigsby is probably a tier above the other running backs. Him and Warren are pretty strong, but the reports out of Jacksonville are pretty good for Tank Bigsby that he's going to likely be the pass catching back, and he may actually be used in goal line work. And those are the 2 areas that Travis Etienne actually struggled in. So if you're taking the goal line and the pass catching work, like that could be a really big role for a high powered Jacksonville offense.
And I did just grab Zay Jones before, so maybe there's a mini stack there that a week that team could go off.
Yeah, a bunch of Carolina guys you could still grab later on.
Okay, that's true. So the question that I was sort of formulating while you were talking before and we had our picks was a lot of times people go into a draft and what they say or their suggestion when you go into a draft is to not have a plan. So at what point do you think you start solidifying your plan? This is a really nebulous question, so you can take whatever way, but I feel like there's a certain point where you're like, based on how I've drafted, I have no idea how many teams you've drafted, hundreds of teams. This is where I'm probably going to go in the end, and how I'm going to start filling out the rest of my picks. Is that 5 rounds in, 10 rounds in that you feel comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, so like I get the general conception of like I'm going to go into each draft with a blank slate. I'll let the first couple of rounds fall to me and such. I get that. I don't really do that. I mean, once I make a pick. I mean, if I'm honestly, if I'm in the 7th spot, I'll be like, okay, I'm hoping Cooper Kupp falls to me this time based off the way the drafts are going. If he doesn't, like we'll go from there. As soon as that first pick is made, then the clock, I mean, the wheels start going. And it's just thinking about like, okay, where did I get this first player? Did I get them at ADP? Did I get them earlier? Did I get them late? If I got them early, maybe I can just take whatever that second round falling value is to get maybe a unique combination. Did I, reach to grab Devontae Adams at 9? If I did, maybe I'm then going to drive a guy in the second that's actually even falling a little bit too. So now maybe I get even a more unique combination by going with 2 players that are drafted in the second round commonly, so rarely together. Once I grab those, then it start thinking about like, okay, where am I in this draft for my QB, who those stack partners are. And so obviously you got to continue to be flexible and agile as the draft goes. But as soon as that first pick is made, like there's always a plan going.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's just to me, and yeah, because I'm, my biggest strength is wanting to build correlation. Yeah, like you said, that first pick, you always have to start thinking about who you're going to draft afterwards based off that first pick. So I agree that it happens pretty early. I do. Let's see. Is it terrible to want to take Adam Thielen here? I've heard
I think
no one.
Thielen or Chark. Thielen's got the better ADP. I think either are perfectly fine for what you're doing with the stack.
Okay, yeah, and I've heard nothing but negative things about drafting Adam Thielen. So we'll
from the fantasy football circles, 100%. But I will also say, let me do this first.
Yep, make your pick.
Again, don't want tight ends. I need one more wide receiver. Indy, Denver. I could go Alec Pierce here right at ADP. It gives me one stack partner. No running backs jump out. We're going to go with that. Grab Alec Pierce. Gives me a deep threat for Anthony Richardson. Probably done with wide receivers now. If I get Kenny Pickett. Oh yeah, but Adam Thielen maybe? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, but Adam Thielen, his ADP when the BBM really started was probably like in the 120s, maybe 130. And like at that price, he was a horrible pick. Just didn't make sense. There were other guys that were going there. You could get Nico Collins, you could get Zay Jones like 2 rounds later and such. The drafts have corrected a bit. I still think he's a little overpriced, where his ADP is at like 146. But like nothing crazy. And another thing is, if you look at, camp reports, there have been some positive camp reports that, he might be Bryce Young's favorite target. And a veteran wide receiver for a rookie QB, it's not like that unreasonable. I kind of get it. I think as the year goes on, I'd rather have Jonathan Mingo, their rookie, 5th wide receiver off the board. I'd rather probably have DJ Chark. DJ Chark has just a kind of a better profile at this point in his career than Adam Thielen. But all that said, Adam Thielen could also very well be a decent play, and you got him a half a round at value, and it was in the stack.
All right. You stretched a ways there to make it seem like that was a good pick, so I appreciate it.
I think in my rankings, he was the fourth best wide receiver.
Okay.
So like, not, and you're like, if you're getting someone past ADP and part of a stack that you're building, like, it's rarely ever a bad pick.
Yeah, and I don't know. So last year, for example, Hunter Renfrow was like my number one most drafted wide receiver, probably because I was getting a little bit of Devontae love last year in. I was taking him pretty early, but for some reason I like this type of receiver, and that's where I think maybe my bias from liking projections a little too much, the median projections on guys like that, is going to draw me to him as a value more than people targeting upside, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that is something I have to get better at, but
yeah, I mean, so I think that's a good conversation. Levitan actually put out a tweet about this either yesterday or today. They did a podcast on the ETR channel that talked about like difference between best ball and managed leagues and such. And Levitan was saying in managed leagues, he wants to go for those last like 5 rounds he drafts. They all want to be home run picks, because if it is if it doesn't work out, then you just cut him and you go to the waivers or whatever. With best ball, you don't have that. And so if you look at Leone's research, he did the best ball manifesto. If you take zeros in your lineup, like that hurts your lineup a lot, especially when you get into the kind of fantasy playoffs. So while to you're saying like median versus upside aspect, if you look at Hunter Renfrow 2 years ago, before he had that huge breakout season, he was going as a 17th, 18th rounder. And like Drew Dinkmeyer and I were having conversations, and I was like, I don't love Hunter Renfrow. Like, what am I really getting out of it? It seems like just a safe play. And I'd rather be going for, other more upside guys. Turns out that not only was Hunter Renfrow the safe play, he had a huge year. And was that projectable? Not to the degree that it actually happened, but what we could project is this is a guy who was going to be on the field all the time. And that's really all you knew. And that turned out to, hey, availability ended up being the most valuable commodity for him because he built that relationship, became the go-to target for Derek Carr. Was that Derek Carr? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think that median projection thing, I think actually I care more about that earlier in the drafts or maybe early mid than later on. I think like Najee Harris is an example where like Najee Harris probably has a decent median projection because right now you're projecting him as the starting running back, but like his upside scenario is not great and also his floor is not great. But like his median is perfectly fine, but he's a guy I'm not drafting.
Okay. Jacoby Meyer being another guy that sticks out in my head, and these are always like week to week DFS guys that I end up liking as just like one-off sometimes. So I bring some of that over to this too, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that area, Jacoby, Juju, Rondale Moore are all guys that like, I don't know, underneath mainly slot guys. It's not slot. Jacoby's not a slot, but like underneath low average depth of target guys that just don't have that sexiness. We don't expect them to really be able to break out. But if you need wide receiver and if you're a stack partner, like they can still in a 1 week sample have great games, and across a season, like they can still, I don't know, put up. And I like them more than they were around that 140 range. 120 is a little too rich for me, but yeah.
Okay. So I got coming up here, let's see, we got 5 running backs. I don't know, I could almost go anywhere here. I gotta get one Packer on this team, so let's do that.
I love Jaden Reed.
Okay.
He's one of the best values right now. I don't understand why the gap between him and Romeo Doubs is 5 rounds or whatever it is. I think that Romeo to start the season will be in 2 wide sets, but I think rather quickly Jaden Reed will earn that, and he is just a far better prospect, player, everything. And Gilbert is on the clock, and he drafts Matthew Stafford, which gives me Kenny Pickett, which I'm pretty happy about. Really locks me in for that 3-5-7-3. So we missed out on the Geno Smith, but ended up getting actually a better part of that stack because I have Freiermuth, George Pickens, and then JSN is just the bring back.
Excellent. Have you gotten as far as memorizing week 15 and 16 matchups yet?
No, and I'm not going to. I think if you actually look at the impact of it, like it's very, very, very small compared to everything else that I think kind of matters. And if you compare it to the importance of week 17, I don't know the actual ratio, but my guess is it's probably like 1/1000th from an ROI standpoint, as important as week 17. Now, if someone does want to use that as the absolute final tiebreaker after you did everything else, then sure. If it's not hurting you, it's fine to do. But I think there's almost always better decisions that can be made to influence your decisions than week 15 or 16 matchups.
Okay. Let's see. Well, you're almost on the clock here, so I'll let you wait for
I'm good.
them.
I'll be, as I mentioned, like I'm going to leave my 17th and 18th for tight end. So here I'm just looking at running back. I can go Jeff Wilson or Tyjae Spears. One of them is Tyjae's probably more upside. Jeff Wilson's probably more just giving points. I've got a weird like double bye week thing with 5-5, 13-13. So I'm going to grab Jeff Wilson. Just understand that there's 2 weeks that I'm pretty much going to be looking for production from him. And hope that Dalvin doesn't go to Miami. But if he does, maybe Jeff Wilson gets traded.
Yeah, or hurt. He's never gotten hurt before.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sort of in a weird place that I want to take another RB, a QB, and 2 tight ends. So I'm gonna just because you mentioned his name, I'm gonna take Tyjae Spears here as my 6th guy. I don't know too much about him, but I do know these other people, and I don't really see a ton of upside on any of them. So I'm gonna assume a rookie running back has some sort of potential.
Rookie running back looked pretty good in college. Liked his profile. Playing to Tennessee, like there's a chance that maybe he gets a little of the pass work. We haven't really seen them. I mean, the secondary running back to Derrick Henry hasn't really played out in past years. But then again, Derrick Henry continues to get 1 year older. And Deonta Foreman, when Derrick Henry actually got hurt, was looking pretty good. And I think this is a team where there's kind of a, this doesn't show up in the stats or anything, but I think there's kind of a brand and kind of a culture around that game being and Derrick Henry. And so I think if Derrick Henry went down, I think Tyjae Spears is someone who can kind of fill in and play that role where they're not going to completely revamp their offense. And in general, I think this Tennessee team has shown that they really do want to win. Signing Hopkins maybe opens up the actual field a bit, get a little less 8 men in the box, especially if Derrick Henry were to get hurt. So I think he could play a role with Henry healthy, but it's more of he's probably an elite handcuff.
Okay. I know, I think Haskins was the guy last year that everybody was handcuffing, right?
Yeah, and he got hurt before the season even started, I think. Or
okay, I don't remember.
I'm trying to think if it was Haskins or someone else, because Haskins was definitely one, but I'm trying to think if it was him or someone else that got hurt. It wasn't. I don't know. I'm forgetting.
Okay, so I'm coming up here. I am going to end up with one more tight end, or I'm going to take my QB and tight end, and I don't know that the top of this tight end pool is any better than the bottom of this group here. So I'm just going to take Ritter and make sure nobody randomly decides. I don't know why anybody would, but just take him and look at filling in my second tight end. I guess here's the question then for you. Once you're done picking,
I'm good.
Wait, did I miss him? Somebody did take Isaiah Likely already.
And then Hayden Hurst just went there right as well, which could have been a bring back for you. Michael Mayer is a bring back for me with the Indy, Denver, LAC, Pitt, Seattle. I could grab Noah Fant. What's the bye week? Pat Frymuth is 6. Yeah, we'll grab Michael Mayer just for the bring back. And then, I think what you said was sharp around the Desmond Ridder. I do think Hayden Hurst from a projection wise is a little tier above the others, but also a lot of these guys have higher upside than him. So like it is what it is one way or the other. He also has that Jacksonville kind of game stack. But I do think for you, it was more important. Get that Desmond Ridder, given you need a QB. You've got 2 pass catchers, and it's not going to be that much of a difference whoever you grab next to the tight end.
Okay. Yeah, because Hayden Hurst is going to be basically the main tight end for Carolina. I don't even know who else they would have right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they still have Ian Thomas, or they definitely have at least 1 or 2 other blockers blocking tight ends, but Hayden Hurst will be the primary pass catcher.
All right, just looking here at these other tight ends. I might just end up going with a name that I know well. We'll see if I don't think anybody's going to take Hunter Henry, but
I'll be grabbing either Hunter Henry or Luke Musgrave. Got to make a last-minute decision.
All right,
Hunter Henry.
I didn't say anything.
No, you're good. Hunter Henry is very secure role. He's probably one of the only 3 pass catchers I'd do in the offense, but Luke Musgrave has a bit more upside, and he's running with the ones. I'm going to go with Musgrave.
Okay. Then I'll plan on taking Hunter Henry here. And I'd thrown a few. Oh,
Hunter Henry.
Just kidding.
There you go. Trey McBride's still a very solid option there, with Zach Ertz still recovering from the very bad injury. As I said, lots of still options. Even Noah Fant, Kate Otten, they're all fine.
Yeah, I have not taken any Trey McBride, so we'll do it. We'll take him. He doesn't have the same bye week. That's the other
most important
thing
for that
there.
situation. Yeah.
I did send you some questions ahead of time, and we didn't quite get all to them. But the one big one, as these last few picks come in here, that I'm most interested to know from you, as someone who's been doing this a while, obviously has the win under their belt. Now has a lot more competition, no offense, there's a lot more not smarter than you necessarily, but there's a lot more smarter people in the field in general. So what do you think people can do to separate themselves from the field?
I think first off, there's like 2 levels. One is make sure that you are kind of got the basics under control. And that's where like that, the on the clock, the best ball pyramid that I talked about earlier, like that kind of helps. Like, hey, you just got a level of comfort, I'd say. The second is, and we kind of talked a little about this earlier, but the more familiar you are with where all the players' ADPs are, and then where on the board you're going to have picks later on, the easier it is in real time to be mapping out how the draft is going to go for you. And the more you can kind of think, I'm not talking 2, 3, I'm talking 5, 6, 7, like think that far in advance. And that'll help you make a decision on what position should I be grabbing now. And I think the Lamar example is great, is like, hey, you had 3 wide receivers very early on, great wide receivers. Maybe a 4th and a 5th wide receiver looked like they would have been good value shortly after, but it's actually worth it more to pass up a little value to grab a running back, because as we said, we knew you were going to be grabbing at least 1, maybe even 2 of those Baltimore pass catchers as you did. And so if you would have gone 4 or 5 wide receivers early on, even though they seem like this is a great team and these are great values, what do you do later on when, hey, more wide receivers that you wanted, now you start going those, now you're at 7, You're missing out on the elite tight end. You're missing out on those running backs. And it's all because you could have been planning ahead and thinking through what you're going to be doing 5, 6 rounds later.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Basically just draft. That's always my first recommendation when somebody comes into baseball. Like, oh, maybe especially if they come from football, they're used to like, oh, this is what my structure should be, or this is a certain build type. And I say, no, just like try to be even with your picks at ADP on your first couple of drafts. Do some stacking, but don't like force it. Just draft and understand what's happening first before you really try and outthink yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so let's just quick here pull up the team. So I ended up 2-6-8-2, Lamar Jackson, Desmond Ridder, quarterbacks. My running backs, Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, Tank Bigsby, Kenneth Gainwell, Tyjae Spears. That's, I don't think, a super exciting running back room, but I could be wrong there. And then wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, Zay Jones, Adam Thielen, and Jaden Reed. Tight ends, Kyle Pitts and Trey McBride. I don't love it, but it seems the structure's there.
Yeah, I mean, this team's just going to live or die on what happens with the Atlanta passing offense. And, even though, like, hey, Desmond Ridder's scores may not count that often, but, like, you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, great wide receivers. You need to be able to have, like, an elite tight end that actually performs well for that team. Because, as you said, like, you got to make up some points at that running back. But overall, I think it's a fine team. And it's just, hey, you're making a bet on the Atlanta offense, and it's either going to work out or it's not.
Okay, and so your team, 3 QBs, Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett. And then running backs, you have Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Madison, Jerome Ford, and Jeff Wilson. I missed the Jerome Ford pick. I guess what is your read on Cleveland running backs after Chubb in general?
I think Jerome Ford is likely going to play the kind of Kareem Hunt role, or at least work his way into it. There was just a quote. Let me see if I can find the quote real quick. The general manager, Andrew Berry, says, a big reason that we drafted Jerome Ford in 22 was because of his ability as a receiver, and we think that he'll be able to play that role really, really well. So I'm expecting that Jerome Ford does get a little bit more of a pass-catching role. If Nick Chubb were to get hurt, does he have the opportunity to expand beyond that? I'm not really sure. Hopefully. But for this team, when I have, Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Madison pretty heavily invested, for those other guys, I'm really looking for, hey, just give me some kind of safety. Maybe one of those gets injured. Give me some points. I'm not as much, trying to hit a home run with those picks, because even though I hit a home run, are they still going to be outscoring Eckler, Jacobs, Madison? I don't know.
Okay. And then your wide receivers, Devontae Adams, Jerry Jeudy, JSN, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Michael Gallup, and Alec Pierce. Tight ends, Pat Freiermuth, Michael Mayer, and Luke Musgrave. So again, a lot of stacks and bringbacks here for the week 17 stuff. So how do you feel about this one? I know, yeah. I know myself, after a certain draft, I stopped feeling things specifically about teams. So I totally understand if you're sort of in a daze right now.
No, it's more of like, as I'm going through it, like, did I get my stacks that I feel like I have to reach? Did I get some falling value? And I think overall is pretty decent. Getting two pass catchers of the Pitt stack with a bring back in JSN, getting 2 pass catchers for the Denver stack with Austin Eckler as the bring back, great there. And then Anthony Richardson just by himself, but with Devontae Adams and Michael Mayer as the bring backs over there too for a shootout game. So it kind of fell together. Oh, and Alec Pierce as the deep threat for Anthony Richardson as well. So it kind of fell together pretty well. I didn't feel like I had to reach. Got a little value here and there on some picks. So I don't know. I like it. I give it a B+.
Okay. One last question before we pop out of here. Are you do you feel like you specifically, or do you specifically keep track of your roster builds here in terms of numbers and have a target for, hey, I want this many, this sort of team, or is it more of a feel thing?
Yeah, not really. Definitely not from a roster construction or anything like that. I think I just have an idea of like, hey, where I should be investing draft capital at different positions and where it's okay. I think if you get too lost in just the core structures, often what happens is like you're not weighing the early picks as much as you should at the end, because really investing in a QB in the second round is worth more draft capital than investing the final 3 picks in a QB later on. And so if you ended up with wonky, hey, roster constructions because you're trying to think that the 18th is the same as an early on, like kind of get locked into just rigid structures. So from me, I'm more looking at my player exposure. I'm looking at some of my kind of, hey, how am I getting my stacks? Trying to think of some uniqueness and stuff. But from a review angle, it's mostly just looking at kind of where I am from an exposure and then where I am from a rankings and ADP standpoint.
All right. Excellent. Well, this was awesome, Justin. You can check him out at Justin Herzig on Twitter if you aren't already following him, and you can check all of his work out at ETR. Appreciate you. Hopefully, you keep your sanity and you don't have too many shows lined up. But I think it's an awesome thing that you're doing.
Yeah. The shows are fun, and then so my August actually. Majority of August is focused on obviously best ball, but then we have a company called On the Moment that does kind of fantasy sports games as well. So specifically, we've launched a new way to kind of play best ball. That's a bit more of a best ball blitz version where you get a pack, you open that pack, and you set your lineup from that pack, and it all can be done in like 3 minutes. And then you can sweat that lineup through the season. You can go to the marketplace where you buy or sell your best ball team. And like that structure, there's zero rake. It's really just kind of a fun game for people to play, see what we're doing with kind of fantasy sports games on the site. So if people are interested there, I've actually got like a free entry for people. Just go to my Twitter and you can see the pinned tweet there and join for a free contest there. We've got some prizes as well. So it's a fun way to play best ball. And if you want to start getting into it, awesome. And the second one is some people may know it. It's called the Owners Club. We launched this back in 2021, but it's like digital trading cards plus fantasy football. And there's like an on-site marketplace. You buy, sell, trade cards. And then once you buy those packs, all the contests are free to enter. So we had a live final down in Miami the first year, which was cool, down at the Miami Heat Arena. We gave away, I think, $1.5 million in prizes. And we are kicking that off next week or so. So if you're interested, just check out my Twitter or send me a DM, and I think I can get you a free starter pack there as well. So I'm happy to chat with anyone about that stuff too.
Yeah, and I don't know. Last week we talked so rare, so I am in those streets a little bit, as they say. So yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out myself. So thank you everybody for joining me. We'll be back next week, I think on Friday, with a different champion from a different site. So we'll leave that hanging there. But yeah, we'll be talking football this whole month. So Justin and me, everybody, thank you for watching and have a good, I guess usually I say weekend because it's Friday, but have a good work week.